Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so today UPSC conducted engineering examination, and Animesh sent me some questions. So he was like, "Sir, these are the questions which UPSC is asking." So we was just checking, and there are some questions from our test series also. So recently, those who have given test series. So let's see this question. This which either questions are from target or test series. Most of the questions. So you can see this question. Which one is not following statement is not correct about the Atal tunnel. So this thing I have asked. I have given you target or PIB target from 1st October to 8th October 2020. So see this one I have given, and you can go through this article and easily you can answer this. And apart from that, there are see this question about CMS COP 13. So it is asking where it's going to happen. Okay, it was held, and you see this thing I have asked uh, in a test. In our test series, I have asked this thing. Can you directly read it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So
Yes, sir.
on I think 13th March or 17th March, I have taken this test. So it is the question which have been asked. Okay, and then see this question: Nishtha program and Swanidhi program. See this question. Can you see it? This question I have asked, and Nishtha also have asked. Let me show you Nishtha. Somewhere I have mentioned that also. See this Nishtha program also I have asked. And if you read the question and if you read the solution, easily you can answer all these questions. Then this question, I think, which one is this anime? Is 46th or 47th? Yeah, 47
47,
cloud.
sir.
47. So this target I have given on 19th February 2021. If you read this, easily you can answer. This also anime is pointed out. And this question UNEP, this major component of uh, it's asking about major component of air pollution. I mean, there are a lot of people who are still joining. So yes. So you see this question in today's. I think today I have asked. Yeah, today only I have asked this question in the morning. That these are the carbon monoxide, lead, nitrogen dioxide, particulate matter, then sulfur dioxide, and ground level ozone. Six principal pollutants. So this thing they have asked. And apart from that, this question, which one is following is not correctly matched pair regarding regional biodiversity, alpha, beta, gamma. So I think this thing, yeah, this question on 17th March, I have taken second history environment test. In that, this I have asked. There are many questions also. I could find these many only because I had little bit time. So you can see. So I don't want to claim anything. I don't want to say anything. What I want to say that just give test because we are targeting only UPSC. So be it UPSC CDS exam, be it any exam of UPSC, questions will definitely come from our test series. So therefore, it's my humble request that please take test on the time, because there are many people who are not taking test and they are thinking कि चलो अरे हम लोग कर लेंगे बाद में होगा. भाई बाद में कुछ नहीं होता है, बाद में सिर्फ रोना होता है. मानो ना मानो, या तो फिर आप यू आर नॉट सीरियस इनफ ओनली, बट इफ यू आर सीरियस इनफ प्लीज टेक टेस्ट एंड प्लीज कंप्लीट योर टारगेट्स. और अगर आप सोच रहे हो कि भाई जो है जो टारगेट्स आपको दिए जा रहे हैं और सब ऐसे वैसे हैं, एटलीस्ट एक टारगेट ढूंढने में कितना ही टाइम लग जाता है, ठीक है, और क्वेश्चन बनाने में भी काफी टाइम लगता है. तो प्लीज आप लोगों से रिक्वेस्ट है, अगर आपको सी इफ यू डोंट ट्रस्ट मी देन इट्स ऑल राइट, इट्स अप टू यू, देन यू गो टू विजन, you go wherever you want to go, and you won't get much. This thing is also I'm saying because they are now obsolete kind of, but whatever, because I'm putting lot of efforts, and please utilize that thing, because see I can't use all these things for myself. This thing I surely know, but what I can do some other people can use it, so therefore you should use it. Okay, so we are starting from doubt. So first doubt, it is asked by Akshay, and uh, he asked about who has the power to notify an area. So let me put his question here only. Just give me a second. Can you see this?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yeah, so it's related to biodiversity, and his question was that who has the power to notify an area as biodiversity hotspot in India? Is it both state and central government, or both, and any clearance needed? Anybody knows about it? Have you heard about Norman Myers?
Yes.
Okay, so he was the British ecologist Norman Myers. So he published a paper where he had identified some 10 tropical forest hotspot, and thereafter, after certain some point of time, Conservation International, this institute had adopted Myers hotspot as its institutional blueprint in 1989. And after that, what happened that it made some sort of review and some reassessment. Okay, and it had formed some teams, and thereafter it had declared designated basically 25 areas as biodiversity hotspots area. So state government and central government or any government has no role in declaration of or in notifying biodiversity hotspot area. It is the Conservation International which designate any particular geographical area as a biodiversity hotspot on certain criteria. What are those criteria to declare any area as biodiversity hotspot, and how many biodiversity hotspots are there in the world right now?
Hello. Total, I guess it's around 36, sir. But probably, like, I might not know all the criteria, but
Yeah, it's
uh,
36.
and, endemic species and like very high proportion of endangered or threatened species should be there in that region, and a lot of endemic species should be one of the conditions.
Yeah, so these are two criteria. One is endemism, and second, loss of habitat. What is the meaning of endemism?
Found
So
in only that area. Something found in that area only.
Yes, so basically the region should have 1500 species of vascular plants. Okay, and second thing, second criteria is loss of habitat. So basically it says that at least 70% of area had been lost, or we can, in other words, we can say that it must contain 30% of its original habitat. So it must be threatened, right? So this is what this is the criteria which Conservation International use to declare any particular area as biodiversity hotspot. There are officially 36 biodiversity hotspot in the world, and 4 out of 36 biodiversity hotspot in the world are present in India. Can you please name those 4 biodiversity hotspot which are in India?
So Western Ghats, Andaman and Nicobar.
Hmm.
Then one was near Sikkim, Eastern, and one was Himalayas.
Himalayas is okay. Western Ghat is okay.
Andaman and Nicobar.
That is
Pakka.
Sundaland. Sundaland.
Yeah, it's Sunderland. It's Sunderland. One more.
One more sir, that
Indo-Burma.
yeah, Indo-Burma, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Eastern side.
So
So
there
the
are
Eastern Himalayas and Indo-Burma are separate, or are we talking about the same area by referring it to as Indo-Burma?
see Indo-Burma is different. Okay, and this Himalayas is different. I mean they are connected almost, but they are different. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So there are
So
four.
one question, sir. You mentioned about
Yes,
Conservation International. Is it similar to like IUCN that it has just an observer status at UN and it's an, or is it an
IUCN.
intergovernmental organization,
Mhm.
conservation? Like in this Conservation International has membership from both countries and NGOs. Like how? What about the membership? If you have anything in hand,
Can you please repeat your question? I could not hear
like
clearly.
what I meant was, does it has like what about the membership? Is it like an intergovernmental organization, an NGO kind of thing, or only do countries also are part of the Conservation International organization?
Basically, this Conservation International is a non-profit environmental organization, so we can say it's kind of NGO, and it's located in United States of America. And basically, it works with policymaker, business, government, communities. So it brings everybody on a platform. Did you get it, or do I need to explain more?
Yes, no, sir. It's pretty much similar to like Wetlands International, I guess.
Yeah, it's almost same.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, so it was the first doubt he asked. Anything else if you want to ask?
Like I got my answer, so it's fine.
Okay, so I have a question and any of you can answer it. My question is that which one is the last biodiversity hotspot? Last notified biodiversity hotspot. Anyone? Can you please tell me?
American coastal plains.
Yeah, it is basically North American coastal plain. So now we'll talk about the next doubt. And the next doubt he had asked this. Is there any difference between biodiversity heritage hotspot and biodiversity hotspot? Anyone, if you can answer it? Anybody? See, you know what is biodiversity hotspot, right? When we are talking about a heritage hotspot or heritage area, so basically it has cultural aspect also. So it has ties with some culture. So culture plus biodiversity. in this biodiversity hotspot. So this is the major difference between these two things. And can you please tell me that who can declare biodiversity heritage site in India?
From state government?
Yes, state government. State government under which act?
Biological Diversity Act.
Biodiversity Act.
Yeah, and I have a question that Water Act, Biodiversity Act, and Environment Protection Act. Arrange all these three in chronological order. Water Act, Biodiversity Act, and Environment Protection Act.
So the first is
Yes, go ahead. Yes, please go ahead.
So the first is Environment Protection Act, then Water Act, and then Biodiversity Act.
Environment, then water, then biodiversity, right?
Yes, sir.
Anybody, if you differ with this?
Hello.
Yes, Animesh.
Sir, I think Water Pollution Act was earlier than Environment Protection Act.
Yes, sir.
Like water,
in
environment, and
1971.
biodiversity. Sir.
Yeah,
Sir, Water Act
water
was
in 1970.
70s.
Water Act came in 1974.
Then
Is
EPA
it?
in 1986 and
This biodiversity
biodiversity
was,
in 2002.
Yes.
yeah.
So the correct order will be Water Act, then your this Environment Protection Act, and then
Biodiversity.
biodiversity. What if I would have asked about Wildlife Protection Act also?
1972, that was, so it would have come before.
Sir, it will be Water Act, then Wildlife Act, then Environment Act, and at the last, Biodiversity Act.
No, Rajandeep. First one would be Wildlife Protection
Wildlife
Act.
was in 72.
Yeah,
Sorry, yeah,
Wildlife.
72. Yeah, I got confused.
Yeah, Wildlife Protection Act, 1972, Water Act, 1974, and then Environment Protection Act. It was in 1986, right?
Yes, sir.
And Biodiversity Act, 2002. Okay. So now the next question here asked that the power of political parties to issue whip, where do they draw that power? Is it from RPA Act or it is mentioned anywhere in the Constitution? So anybody, if you can tell me about something.
Sir, whip is neither mentioned in Constitution nor in the Parliamentary Convention.
Pardon,
So
come
it is
again?
basically, sir, it is not mentioned in Constitution,
Yes.
and neither it is mentioned in Parliamentary Convention. So basically, it is the innovation kind of thing, like the party issue it on its own.
Yes, exactly. And what happens if someone does not obey the guideline issued by whip?
Defection, sir, anti-defection law.
Yeah, that person will draw anti-defection law. So I'll explain it in brief. So basically, the whip is an official of a political party, and what does he do? He acts as the party's enforcer inside the Legislative Assembly or House of Parliament. All right.
So if something says, for example, if there is any bill which is coming up in the parliament, and then this bill will call everyone and will inform those member of parliament or state MLAs that you have to present in the house and you have to vote in the favor, okay, in the favor of the motion. If any member who goes against this, then it will be considered as if that he is going against the party line, and it means that it will attract anti-defection law and his membership may be cancelled. So who will decide about the membership in such case?
The speaker or
Speaker.
Yeah, speaker. And from where we have taken this concept of whip? Anyone? From from Britain we have taken this, from the British parliamentary system we have taken this concept of whip. All right. Anyone so far, any doubt?
Hello.
Yes, Gargi.
So I wanted to ask one thing from the previous question.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the difference between Water Act of 1965 and Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974?
Which
Is
one?
Water Act of 1965
Hmm.
and Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974.
Sir, can I?
Yes, anyway, go ahead. First one is Clean Water Act.
Actually, yeah, that one is quality. Basically, that
Yes.
deals with maintaining the quality of water, whereas Water Pollution Act that deals with controlling the water pollution, and also it includes like setting up CPCB and those bodies.
State Pollution Control Board, Central Pollution Control Board, all this.
Okay,
Gargi?
thank you. Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, we next thing here asked about what did he ask about sedition law? So who is going to answer this thing? Can you see it?
Sir, can I?
Yes, anyways.
Basically, in Kedarnath case, Supreme Court observed that sedition law can be used, but not very much. So, if Supreme Court is trying to repeal the sedition law, then it will not be judicial overreach, but it will be basically judicial activism. So that means they are trying to get the freedom of citizens under control. Basically, this is like CGI has told that this is a British law and archaic law, so so that we need not use it regularly, as has been seen in 2019 with doubling the cases of sedition.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning of the question. So first thing he is asking, if it gets liquidated or repealed, will that be by an executive order or law? So my first question is here, whether any law can be repealed by executive order?
So through ordinance.
Ordinance has the same effect as the law. So ordinance is not executive order, it is law basically.
Sir, executive order is basically rules that are made to implement
Yes.
law.
So can it?
So basically, it will not result in executive order that requires law, basically making a
Yeah.
law for repealing.
So Parliament will have to amend IPC to repeal this law. So one way is that Parliament repeals this law. Second is judicial review. So there are many cases which are
going on in Supreme Court, and the verdict is still pending. However, if Supreme Court finds that this section is against any fundamental right or against any provision of the Supreme Court, then Supreme Court can declare it unconstitutional, and the power used by Supreme Court to declare such law unconstitutional will be the power of judicial review. Now we'll talk about about
Sir, just one additional or supplementary point on this, my question, sir. Like right now, from what I understood, and the recent happenings have been coming from the Attorney General also, that there is a statement which reads that any sign or slogan which incites violence. So what my understanding is, if the government or the Attorney General further describes what incites violence, in that case, though, it's kind of a rule or a provision being broadened rather than the law being repealed. So, us case mein, sir, will it still be?
It's not the government which will describe what is incitement. It is the court which will tell whether it's an incitement or not. So it is upon the court to interpret the law, not the government or Attorney General. No one can interpret law except the court. Okay. Second thing, we don't need to go into nitty-gritty what is there, what is that, because this is the matter which is sub judice in the court. So court will decide upon this. So we cannot, we don't need to think about these kind of things. We just have to see the concept. So first concept, that it can be obviously struck down by judicial review. If already someone has filed, someone has challenged this law, so obviously it is under the judicial review. Second thing, judicial activism. So somebody, so what happens that, say for example, Supreme Court takes sumo to cognizance. This law is archaic and this law is doing too much harm. Okay, and there may be many things. So if judiciary taking its own and it is justifying, then it may be judicial activism. And for judicial overreach, we can't say it would be actually judicial overreach, because to interpret the law or to whether this law is constitutional or not, it is the task of judiciary only, right? So we can't say that it is judicial overreach. So from my side, this is. Now, if you have any question, then we'll talk about it. Otherwise, I'm going to discuss another doubt.
No, sir, I got it.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, can Supreme Court use Article 142 to repeal it once in all?
Yes, obviously, to do complete justice, Supreme Court said it.
That's what I was. Okay.
Yeah, somebody was asking some topper strategy or video website. Should we read and follow? So on this thing, I won't talk much, because these days I don't believe in toppers. Most of them are sold out. So I can't say. And simply, you just need guidance. You don't need anyone else's strategy, to my understanding, for UPSC. Right? You should know what needs to be done and what should be read and what should not. That's enough, more than enough. So make your own strategy, that how you have to study. Or already I am telling you things that what to study. Now, somebody is asking, I am reading the Hindu daily but can't make much out of those editorial and don't know how to use those editorial. Is it recommended to make notes out of editorial? Yes, it is recommended to make notes out of editorial. But before reading editorial, you need to understand the syllabus. If you are unable to understand the syllabus, you won't be able to use editorials, how to use them. So first, learn syllabus, especially main syllabus, and then try to correlate all those news with that syllabus. Now, the next thing, who is asking next thing? So next question, let me see. Yeah. So Mayuri was asking that explain the concept of judicial review and judicial activism by outlining the differences. So I have already explained this thing. What is judicial review? What is judicial activism? Mayuri, did you understand this thing, or do I need to?
So can you explain it again with examples? Like, I'm getting confused.
Okay. This is 66A. Have you heard about IT Act of 66A?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So I'll tell you. So what happened that Bala Sahab Thackeray died, and there were two girls. One girl, they shut down the Bombay. So one girl said something that why to shut down Bombay and all, and another girl endorsed her views. So what happened that immediately the FIR had been filed against these two girls, and they have been arrested under Section 66A of IT Act. Thereafter, there is this Shreya Shingal. So she was a college student of Delhi University, law student of Delhi University. Okay, so at that point of time, she challenged this law and she said this law is arbitrary and bad in the law. It's unjust and it is against Article 14. It is against 19. It is against 21. So the court had struck down this law. So what court did that Shreya Singhal challenged this law to review. Shreya Singhal asked court that please review this law. This law is unjust, arbitrary. All right. Are you getting what I am saying?
Yes, sir.
And it is violating my fundamental right under Article 14, 19, and 21. That's what she said. So Supreme Court had to review this law. And while reviewing this law, Supreme Court found out that this law is actually against the fundamental right. Therefore, they have struck it down. So this procedure is known as judicial review. All right?
Yes, sir.
Now, this is the story of a sad guy, of a person. So this guy was in Tihar jail. It's a long back, somewhere 1970s or in 80s, sometime back, that point of time. So what happened that this guy actually wrote a letter to then Chief Justice of India, and he said that we are living in very pathetic and poor condition, and we don't have any human right, and so on. So the cognizance had been taken by the Chief Justice of India. So this letter had been considered as public interest litigation, PIL, and judiciary has taken this cognizance on its own. Okay, this letter, it has taken the cognizance and it has issued a lot of guidelines that government should do this thing. Government should. There are many guidelines to government to ensure to ensure better life for these prisoners. So this thing was actually starting of judicial activism. Judicial activism means that even no one is going to judiciary. Judiciary is saying something is happening wrong, something is against the human dignity, and judiciary intervenes it. And under Article 142, it tries to do complete justice. All right, Mayuri?
Yes, sir. Got it.
Okay. Anyone, if you have any doubt?
Sir, I have one doubt that Shreya Singhal versus Union of India, can it be an example of doctrine of severability, sir?
Yes, it is example of doctrine of severability.
Right.
Now, Mayuri asked me about please discuss the SE, BC and EWS judgment of the Supreme Court, the quota limit and all. Anybody, if you know about this thing?
Quota limit, as in, is it pertaining to the?
Anyone?
Is it like, does she, like, is the question meaning about talking about the Indra Sahni judgment and the limits put in there, that it shouldn't go beyond 50% only in extreme cases? then female
recently something happened about this SEBC thing. So first thing, Mayuri, I want to tell you about EWS. So there is no judgment about EWS. It is still pending in the court. So we won't talk about it. Now we'll talk about SEBC. So recently what happened that the government of India, center, basically we'll call center, that they have sought, they asked Supreme Court to review the judgment of judgment given by the Supreme Court on 5th May. And on 5th May, Supreme Court held that 102 Constitutional Amendment Act took away state power. Please mute your mic. Took away state's power to declare socially and educationally backward classes for grant of quota in jobs and admission. In other words, I'll tell you that Supreme Court said that after the 102 amendment, after 102 amendment, the state government do not have power to declare socially and educationally backward classes for grant of quota in jobs and admission. So when we talks about jobs, so it comes under Article 16, and when we talks about admission, it comes under Article 15. All right. So in higher education, admission and jobs, state government cannot declare any class as a backward class, socially and educationally backward class. So this is what Supreme Court had said. This is the effect of 102 amendment. So same thing, the government had asked to court that please review this, and this is the intact power of state government, and therefore they can review this law. So once again, Supreme Court said that no, they don't have any power to declare these categories as a socially, economic and educationally backward classes. So this is what happened in this case. Now what happens in 102 Constitutional Amendment Act? It came in 2018 and it inserted few articles in the Constitution of India. So first article was 338B, Article 338B. What does Article 338B talk about?
NCBC gets a constitutional validity.
Yeah. So basically, Article 338B deals with the structure, duties, and power of NCBC, while another article 342A, it was also inserted, and it says that it talks about the power of the president to notify a particular caste as a SEBC, and power of parliament to change the list. So the list can be changed by the parliament, and president can notify any caste as SEBC. All right. So this thing came by 102 Constitutional Amendment Act, and recently this on 5th May, it was hearing Maratha quota. The Supreme Court Constitutional Bench was hearing Maratha quota. So it said that state government cannot provide anyone this quota under SEBC category, and therefore it is unconstitutional. So this, and it is exclusive power of the center to declare SEBC. However, that state government can identify them. State government can identify them, and they can send the proposal to the President of India, or in other word, I can say that to Union government, that please consider these castes as SEBC and provide them quota. All right. So this is what happened, and they have obviously Supreme Court struck down this law, and Supreme Court said that 102 is constitutionally valid. Anyone, if you have any doubt?
So I had one question on this. Like at the national level, it is clear that the power relies only with the government or the president, and it is verified by the NCBC whether to add that community under the list. But at the state level, is it still vesting with the central authority, because there are commission for the backward class even at the state level? So could it be a case for state jobs, like any state job of group 1 to 4, the state government can notify a group as a backward, like in the central list it might not be backward, but in the state list it can be. Can that happen?
No, now that cannot be happen after the adjustment. Supreme Court clearly said that it is the exclusive right of the center.
Both at the state and center.
Yes.
Okay.
Now we'll talk about concept of money. What is this 0123? What does this denote?
Different types of money in circulation in the market, whether
But
like
it has some mean. It has some. It's
like
it can be related to liquidity also. Liquidity of money.
yeah, like the based on what type and who holds it or where it is deposited, it's either more liquid or it is more in quantity. While M0 is something which is only the RBI generates narrow money, and the others are accordingly either in the either it could be saved in a time deposit manner or in a very current manner.
Which one is more liquid, M0 or M3?
Like as we go down, sir, the liquidity decreases. Like M3 is the least liquid, M1 is the most liquid.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I was saying the same thing, that M0 it will be the most liquid, and then the M3 it will be the least liquid, because M0 it will contain only cash that the public have, and then M3 there will be a current account, CASA, and then demand deposits also. That's what.
Yeah. So basically, the lower the number, the higher the degree of liquidity. Got it? Did you understand this thing?
Yes, sir.
M0 is that the lower the number, higher the degree of liquidity. You can note it down because if you forgot this thing in future, then it will help you to recall. So,
sir, but M0 should be rather the money printed by RBI, no, and like not the, like what I mean to say, M1 should be the one which is just cash. And
let's talk about it. Then we'll understand. We call it reserve money. Okay, so it is the, see, we are not talking about in Indian context. First thing, we are talking about in the context of economics. Okay, so first thing, it is the most liquid form of money. It is nothing but mere cash. All right, it is also known as high powered money, M0. Or we can say base money, or we can say central bank money. Central Bank of India nahi. Central means RBI, Central Bank of any government. All right. So now we'll talk about these concepts. So how this money thing came and how what is happening in India. Now we'll talk about in Indian context. So you'll have to listen very carefully. So what happened, that second working group on money supply in 1997 recommended about monetary aggregates, and they were M1, M2, M3 and M4 besides the reserve money, apart from reserve money. Okay, so from among the aggregates, M1 and M3 are extensively used both for policy purpose and in academic exercise. M1 includes currency with public, non-interest bearing deposit with banking sector, including that of RBI.
What does M3 capture? It captures the complete balance sheet of banking sector. M2 and M4 that include post office saving bank deposits are not very widely used, and reserve money and M3 aggregates are presented both for the components, liabilities and assets. Now what happened that RBI has started publishing a new monetary aggregates following the recommendation of Bivy Reddy committee, and it submitted its report in June 1998, and the working group recommendation compilation for 4 monetary aggregate on the basis of balance sheet of the banking sector in conformity with the norms of progressive liquidity. So first one is M0, that is called monetary base, M1 narrow money, M2 and M3 broad money. All right. And thereafter they have recommended for the compilation of liquidity aggregates also. So they were L1, L2 and L3. Now there are these M0 is compiled weekly. So it is called weekly compilation, and M1 and M2 and M3 they compiled fortnightly. So therefore they published fortnightly. Now we'll talk about first M0. So what is M0? Currency in circulation, banks deposit with RBI plus other deposits with RBI. So this is M0. M0 is most liquid money, and it is something that currency in circulation. What is the meaning of currency in circulation?
The total money held by the people or in the bank deposits.
Anyone else?
That's the notes issued by RBI, printed and issued by RBI.
Yes. So basically, and what about other deposits with RBI? When we are talking about other deposits with RBI, it means the deposit of quasi-government and other financial institutions, including primary dealers, balances in accounts of foreign central banks and governments. Third one is account of international agencies such as International Monetary Fund. All right, so this is M0. This is the most liquid one. Now we are going to discuss about M1. What is M1? M1 is basically nothing. Currency with public plus demand deposit with bank plus other deposits with RBI. So when we are talking about other deposits with RBI, so it's the same thing, this thing only. What is the meaning of demand deposit?
So the deposits which we keep in the bank and for that interest is given, like we can withdraw it any time.
Okay, so if I have FD in or RD, recurring deposit in bank, then will it be considered under demand deposit?
No, sir.
No, sir. No, that will not be demand deposit.
Yes, it is time deposit, not the demand deposit. Demand deposit means that you go to bank and ask them, okay, please keep my money, and they'll give you their money on your demand. So it can be your current account and it can be your saving account. इतना समझ में आया आपको M1? It is called narrow money. Yes.
So what is the difference between that currency in circulation and currency with the public?
When we are talking about currency in circulation, it means that in total currency is out there. Okay, and but there may be some currency with bank, there may be some currency with other institution, right? So that is currency in circulation. It means, say for example, that RBI has printed 15 lakh crore rupees. So this entire money is currency in circulation.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
And when we are talking about currency with public, so maybe public had held say 6 lakh crore rupees. At that point of time. It's almost kind of same thing. Okay.
Yes,
Now we'll talk about M2. What is M2?
M1 plus post office.
Time liabilities. Plus so when we are talking about M2, it is currency with public, current deposit with banking system, saving deposit with banking system, certificate of deposit issued by banks, term deposit of resident with contractual maturity up to and including 1 year with the banking system, plus other deposits with RBI. This is M2. What about M3?
M1 plus public time deposits in bank.
Anybody else? Anyone? Nobody knows about it. Anyone?
Hello.
Yes, Gargi.
Sir, M3, I think it's M1 plus net time deposits of commercial banks.
M3 is M2 plus term deposit of residents with a contractual maturity over 1 year with the banking system plus term borrowing from non-depository financial corporation by the banking system. Clear है?
Hello, sir.
Sir, can you explain the time?
सर शायद मतलब M2 में टाइम लाइबिलिटीज नहीं होती है, मतलब जो मैंने पढ़ा था उसमें मतलब एक्चुअली ये था कि M1 प्लस सेविंग डिपॉजिट्स विथ बैंक पोस्ट ऑफिस is known as M2, whereas M3 is M1 plus time liabilities with bank, that is M3.
M2 is M1 plus time liabilities portion of saving deposit with the banking system plus certificates of deposit issued by bank, term deposit of resident with a contractual maturity of up to 1 year with the banking system. This is M2. And I'm not saying this I have taken from the website of RBI.
And Animesh, the savings deposit will include both time and demand. So your definition includes both.
Okay, so I'll talk further about it. That while talking about reserve money, so reserve money is nothing but the currency in circulation plus banks and other deposit with RBI. Now the currency and deposits are two important components of money. You know this thing, okay? And to understand the money supply, we need to know the interaction between them, that how they interact and how the regulators policy influence these two components of the money. And this thing I'm going to see, whatever we have discussed, this is not going to come into examination. This is for just basic understanding, but what we are going to discuss, it may come in the examination. So please listen it carefully and try to understand these things very, So first thing, we need to mindful about the behaviors of three money market players. And first one is regulator, that is the central bank. In our case, this is RBI. Second thing, the users, individual and institution that hold deposits in bank and borrow from bank. So I mean, the second thing is talking about us, public and institution also. Third one is the banks, financial intermediaries that accept deposits from individual and institution and make loans. So three things are involved in this thing: RBI, individual and financial institution, excluding banks, and banks. Now what happened that in it is a normal practice for banks to keep a certain part of deposit liability. Okay, tell me, deposit is liability of bank or asset of bank?
Liability, sir.
Yeah, so please remember this thing, whatever deposit in the bank, they are liability of bank. Okay, and what are the assets of bank?
Loans and
Loans given out.
Loans and advances. Anything else?
Sir, gold.
Gold. Government securities, for which it has given money. So let's. So what happens that because bank has this deposit liability, and therefore central bank has this rule that there will be some part of its deposit which will be kept as reserve. Okay, fine. Are you getting this thing?
Yes, sir.
So what we call it, what we call this reserve, the reserve which we have to kept with RBI, what we call it?
Cash to reserve ratio.
Yeah, we call it CRR, cash reserve ratio. So say, for example, let's take example. Let's consider a situation where this reserve ratio, required reserve is 100%. It means that all deposits are required to hold as reserves. Are you getting? Let's say, for example, in banks, 100 rupees had been deposited by Animes, and bank, this Punjab National Bank was asked by the RBI that you have to deposit entire 100 rupees with me. So whenever Animes comes back, he will make a check and I'll give you money and you give him money. All right. So what will happen if we have this system of 100% reserve banking system? If we have, then what will happen?
Then you don't need commercial banks.
No, then what would be the effect on money supply? That is my question.
So bank will not be able to lend to anyone, sir,
Right.
if 100%.
Yeah, exactly. So there will be no effect on money supply, right? Let's talk about another possible scenario. So the another possible scenario is that, say, let's take example कि जो भाई आपका the reserve is 10%. So the bank has 1,000 rupees deposit. So it has to keep 100 rupees with RBI as reserve, and 900 rupees are to lend. Now what happens that this person gives money this banks gives money to me. Okay, and so what, I get 100 rupees, and once again I deposit this money in bank. All right, so what will happen, that this bank will have 8, because out of 900 this bank will have to keep 90 rupees as a reserve, because regulator had said, in our case regulator is RBI, and that you have to keep 10% of your reserve uh, as reserve. Okay, and then you can lend 890 rupees. So he will have, this bank will have 890 rupees to lend, right? Again, he is giving money to someone, he has given 890, so 10% of this, and the remaining amount will be, so this way the chain will go on, isn't it? So this is 1,000 rupees, but it is making lot of money. So what we call it, so if this process continue, it will create more deposits and more loans over the time, and the speed of deposit and loan creation process directly depends on the value of reserve. So now the question may be asked from you, that uh, whether deposits has something to do, whether loan or deposit has something to do with reserve ratio. This type of question may be asked from you, and they can ask, say for example, if RBI increases 20%, uh, I mean 20% reserve ratio, then how would it impact loans, or how would it impact deposits? These kind of question UPSC may ask. So if this thing is going to happen, and one more thing, the smaller the value of reserve, the faster the money creation process. Yeah, so they can ask also that how, say for example, right now, let's take example, CRR is 4%, and now CRR government bank increases to, RBI increases to 5%. So they can ask question, how it will impact the money creation process, or simply they can ask that the money will be created more faster, money will be created with slow speed, it will have no impact, none of the above. These kind of things they can ask. Are you understanding this thing? So if the smaller the value of reserve ratio, then how would it impact money creation process?
So smaller will be the amount that will have to be kept as reserve. So a large amount can be given as loans, sir, and that's how they can earn interest and create more money, sir.
Yes. So we can say the smaller the value of reserve ratio, the faster the money creation process, right?
Yes, sir.
And what do we call this phenomena?
Money multiplier.
Multiplier.
Yes, money multiplier. UPSC had asked this thing. एक बार पूछ चुका है, ठीक है। अब एक तीसरा ऑप्शन भी है, ये तो हमने बहुत सिंपल सा ऑप्शन देख लिया। तीसरा है कि third possible option, that no reserve banking. I mean, there is no reserve. Banks, RBI says you don't need to deposit any reserve, any cash reserve with me. Lend entire your deposits. Okay, so it will have basically, I mean, money will be, the process of money creation will be lightning fast. But this is not going to happen basically. Now we are going to discuss about money multiplier. So money multiplier we understood. What is this? Right? So do I need to discuss money multiplier?
So let's discuss that once.
So, like for money multiplier, the effect, like a single 10 rupees of amount being deposited in the bank becomes much more in the end. Like a lot of it depends on the banking habit of the people. If the crowd doesn't wants to deposit in the bank, they want to go to stereotypical way like of buying gold, yeah, just keeping at their home. Well, then effect fails. No, it all depends ki how much, what's the banking habit of the crowd or population.
Okay. Let's discuss money multiplier. So it's a basically we can define a process known as a simple deposit multiplier, and we have to see how multiple deposits could be created from a change in reserve. If there is change in reserve, then how many times the wealth can be created. So this is basically money multiplier, and for this I can give you one formula. So basically, this D is the change in checkable deposits. D means change in the deposits, and R in the change in the reserve. Okay, okay, Mayuri.
Yes, sir.
So let's take if or the formula is simply 1 upon RRR. So if this is 10%, if it is 10%, then this means for every 100 increase in reserve, there will be 100 into 10,000 increase in deposits. So once again, I'll repeat that. Say, for example, the simple deposit. Once again, I'll repeat. Say, for example, if RRR is 10, okay, 10%, the simple deposit multiplier would be 10. Okay, because what we would do, this is how we calculate things. This is 100. Okay, so 10 upon 10. So this is if the rate is reserve ratio is 10%, then the simple deposit multiplier would be 10. And the meaning is that for every 100 increase in reserve, there will be 1000 increase in deposit. So अगर आपका 1000 रुपीज अभी डिपॉजिट था, अगर इसमें 100 रुपए और इंक्रीज कर दिए जाए, तो हर 100 रुपए इंक्रीज करने के लिए 1000 रुपीज डिपॉजिट में इंक्रीज होगा. इस तरीके से ये मनी लगातार बनती रहेगी. ठीक है, आगे जाएगा पैसा, फिर वो जाएगा, फिर वो बनाएगा, फिर वो बनाएगा, फिर घूम करके यही आ जाएगा इसी तरीके से सर्कल में. सो ये कुछ खास है नहीं इसमें. अच्छा, मुझे बताओ करेंसी लीकेज क्या होता है? Anyone, if you can tell me about currency leakage?
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, basically, money which is not been saved, मतलब जो कि बैंकिंग सिस्टम के बाहर है, लेकिन उसको डिपॉजिट करने के बजाय उसको मतलब लोग अपने पास सेव करके रखे हैं, तो दैट इज नॉट इन द फॉर्मल मनी मार्केट, तो उससे वो लीकेज टाइप का सिस्टम.
हाँ, अब जैसे मान लो कि जो आपने अभी 1000 रुपीज लोन दिया था, ठीक है, 1000 में से 10% तो उसका रिजर्व बेसी हो गया ना. 900 रुपीज उसने बैंक ने लोन दिया. बैंक ने लोन दिया मिस्टर एक्स को. मिस्टर एक्स ने क्या किया, 700 रुपीज बैंक में जमा कर दिए और 200 रुपए अपने पास रख लिए. तो दिस 200 अमाउंट विल बी कॉल्ड मनी लीकेज. समझ में आ गया आपको? मयूरी, डिड यू गेट इट?
Yes, sir, I got it.
Okay, so somebody asked about GDP, GDP related concept also. Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Sir, what will be the effect of money leakage in the economy?
Obviously, it's very quite simple that if you are keeping money, then this money is not in the use, then there will not be the multiplier effect will be less. जो money creation होगा, it will be less. समझ में आ रहा है ना?
So, sir, digital डिजिटल जो हम प्रमोट कर रहे हैं डिजिटल इंडिया, इट इज also promoting, also stopping money leakage also.
How can we say this?
Uh, we are using UPI, so in the way that
See,
no sir.
it's not necessary that the money should have with only bank. It means that money should have been in circulation. अगर आप अपने पास 200 रुपए जमा करके रखोगे और जिंदगी भर इसको यूज नहीं करने दोगे तो ये 200 रुपए का कोई फायदा नहीं रहा ना. तो
द एक्सपेंडिचर जो हुआ है वो शायद वो शॉपकीपर बैंक में डाल दे बाद में, या उसने जिसे रॉ मटेरियल खरीदा है उसने बैंक में डाल देगा.
हाँ,
तो
वो कहीं से भी हो कि वो
expenditure-
कहीं अगर आप इसको 200 को मार्केट में उतारोगे तो कहीं ना कहीं से बैंकिंग सिस्टम में उस मनी मार्केट में चला जाएगा. बट अगर आप इसको नहीं निकालोगे और हमेशा अपनी जेब में रखोगे तो ये तो कुछ होने ही नहीं देगा. इसने तो अपना इफेक्ट मतलब जो मल्टीप्लाई हो सकती थी वो होगी नहीं इससे.
ओके
ठीक है. अभी किसी ने पूछा है एक चीज पूछी है, प्रोडक्शन मेथड और वैल्यू एडिड मेथड. एक इसने पूछा है, ये पूछा था संगति ने. संगति, आर यू देयर? अभी संगति खुद ही नहीं है क्वेश्चन पूछने के बाद में. चलो, we'll talk about it. बस ये लास्ट है, इसके बाद में we'll end it. So basically tell me, what is national income? What is the difference between national income and GDP?
So national income is basically the income earned by all the nationals, that is who belong to one particular country. But when we talk about GDP, it will take into account all the goods and services produced in a territory, sir. Like in a territory, you can have people of your own country and other countries as well. So it takes into account all of that, sir.
Pardon, come again.
So when you talk about national income, so it is the total income that is earned by nationals. So that means they all belong to one particular country itself. So like for example, India. But when you talk about GDP, so it is the value of all the goods and services that are produced in a particular territory, sir. And in a particular territory, there can be people of your own country as well as the people who belong to other countries, sir. So basically it takes into account all of that, sir.
Okay, so I'll give you very simple definition of national income, and I'll so very clearly you can demarcate what is GDP and what is this national income. Okay, so basically national income is nothing but it is the total value of goods and services produced by a country in a financial year. Produced by a country. Okay. Same thing goes for GDP, but one thing that produced within the country. In GDP, it's within the country, within a country, and it is produced by a country. Are you able to understand?
Yes, sir.
समझ में आ रहा है ना ये चीज? It's quite simple. बस आपको इतना समझना है कि अब when we are talking about by a country, so country is कोई कुछ ऐसा है तो नहीं कि country खुद कुछ होगी. country मतलब लोग, country के लोग, ठीक है? So say for example, if this person is living in USA and he is sending money to India, so this will be income of India, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
But this will not be calculated in the GDP of India, is it?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So this is the basic fundamental difference. So I hope that you must have understood this thing. Now I'm going to talk about the method, and one method. There are three methods to determine the national income. So first one is product method, or we can say value added method. Second is income method, and third one is expenditure. So he asked me question about only product method, so I'll talk about it. So I'll give you very simple example, and then we'll finish it off. Okay, so basically this method denotes the value added by various enterprises at every level, starting from production to the final sale. Once again, I'll repeat, it is the method which denotes the value added by various enterprises at every level, starting from production to the final sale. Now I'll give you very simple example, and you can easily understand what is this. So let's take example of flour. So what happens that this flour is sold to, let's start with farmer, miller, and baker. This is stage of production. So farmer, it was wheat, and with miller it was flour, and with baker it was bread. Now this is selling price. So what happens that this farmer is having wheat, he produced wheat, so he's the primary producer, and he sells say 1 kg wheat for 80 rupees. All right. Are you getting this thing?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
In 80 rupees to this guy Miller. Okay, what does Miller does that he sells it for 100 rupees to this guy Baker. 100 रुपए में इसको बेच देता है. समझ में आया? इसमें समझने जैसा कुछ नहीं है, बहुत सिंपल चीज है. फार्मर के पास व्हीट था, व्हीट फार्मर ने मिलर को बेचा 80 रुपए में. मिलर ने क्या किया, इसको 100 रुपए में बेच दिया बेकर को. ठीक है, इतना समझ में आया आपको? डिड यू अंडरस्टैंड दिस थिंग?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
ओके, अभी क्या होता है, ये बनाता है ब्रेड, और ब्रेड को ही बेचता है 120 रुपए में, 120 रुपीज में. जो बेकर है वो ब्रेड बनाता है, उसको 120 रुपए में बेचता है. अब हम लोग इसकी कॉस्ट प्राइस भी देख लेते हैं. व्हाट इज कॉस्ट प्राइस?
Sir, actual money which cost
So
it
the
to.
price at which it is bought.
Yeah, at price it is bought. Okay, basically. So farmer did not buy it because farmer is the producer. So for him, the cost price was 0. For miller, it was 80 rupees. For baker, it was 100 rupees. So this is 300 rupees. This is 180 rupees. All right. Now we'll see value added. What is the value had been added? Here, the value addition is 80 rupees, right?
Yes, sir.
What is the value addition here on this point?
20 rupees.
Yeah, it is 20 rupees. And at this point,
20 rupees again.
20 rupees once again. So final, what is the final, basically, what is the value, how much value has been added?
Sir, 120.
Pardon, come again?
I think total 120 rupees value has been added.
Pakka? आपको शायद समझ में नहीं आया. चलो मैं फिर से एक और एग्जांपल देता हूँ. This time it's a very simple example. इसी एग्जांपल को थोड़ा और तरीके से देखते हैं। एक बेकर है, दिस इज अ बेकर हु बाइज फ्लोर फॉर 100 रुपीज, ठीक है, फ्रॉम दी मिलर। इस मिलर से 100 रुपीज में खरीदता है, ठीक है। 100 के बाद इसको एक फाइनल प्रोडक्ट में चेंज करता है, ब्रेड, और ब्रेड को 120 रुपए में बेचता है। तो इसमें कितनी वैल्यू ऐड हुई यहाँ पे?
20 rupees.
20 rupees.
20 rupees.
So the value addition is 20 rupees, and this floor was intermediary goods. So in this intermediary goods, 100 rupees had 20 rupees had been added. So the value addition is 20 rupees. So did you understand what is value addition? That हर स्टेप पे जो वैल्यू ऐड हो उसको वैल्यू एडिशन बोलते हैं। प्रोडक्शन में जितना भी, जैसे मान लो कि कोई चीज है, उसके A, B, C, D, these are the 4 steps for the final goods. A से B के पास गया, B से C के पास गया, C से D के पास में गया। तो मान लो इसने इसको 100 रुपए में, इसका कुछ नहीं था, ठीक है, चलो इसका कुछ नहीं था, इसने 100 रुपए में खरीदा, ठीक है, इसने 120 रुपए में खरीदा, इसने 140 रुपए में खरीदा, और फाइनल जो था वो लेट्स से 100 रुपीज था, ठीक है। 100 रुपीज फाइनल स्टार्ट में था, और 100 रुपीज से 140 बना, 20 रुपए इस लेवल पे ऐड हुआ, 20 रुपए इस लेवल पे ऐड हुआ, तो टोटल वैल्यू एडिशन कितना हुआ? 40 रुपीज। समझ में आ गया? तो हर स्टेप पे, और इसमें डबल काउंटिंग नहीं होती क्योंकि आप एक बार में काउंट कर लेते हो। यहाँ पे जो वैल्यू एडिशन हुआ उसको आपने काउंट कर लिया, फिर यहाँ पे जो हुआ उसको काउंट कर लिया, तो इस तरीके से आप डबल काउंटिंग को खत्म कर देते हो उसको। ये चीज समझ में आई आपको?
Yes, sir.
ठीक है, बाकी जो है, बाकी tomorrow we'll discuss because I am also low on energy, so tomorrow we'll discuss other doubts, and this thing will once again I'll repeat and I'll discuss. Okay, आपको कुछ, किसी को कुछ वैसा पूछना हो तो बताओ आप।